Hey folks, check out this pencil I just bought. Cost me about 15 bucks, which may not seem like a good deal, but it was a going out of business sale. How do I know if I'll ever get the chance to buy one again? There's nothing quite like consuming a nice refreshing product after a long hard day of work. And video games are my product of choice. They're just so much fun. You need a lot of things to play a video game. A console, controllers, a lack of self-respect. But to get all of those things and the video game itself, you need stores. Obviously, you could sail the high seas to plunder some games for free, but that's a lot of work, and besides, Nintendo would starve without that 8 bucks I spent on Super Mario World. But little known fact, there is a way to get video games for free directly from stores as well, no piracy necessary. You just need a special coupon. But going to a physical store is so annoying, it's such a big investment of time and effort. They're always like at least 15 minutes away. Come on, I don't have that kind of attention span. Put some Subway Surfers gameplay on the dash? Maybe. But lo and behold, there is a much easier way to legally purchase a game from a store. As if gaming wasn't already enough of a reclusive, degenerate hobby, what if you could buy video games without even leaving your room? Enter digital storefronts, specifically the Nintendo eShop. This is an incredibly handy little service that lets you digitally purchase video games and DLC directly from your console. It's super convenient. I don't have to leave my house or worry about whether a store has enough copies or whether a used copy I buy is broken, and it spares you a lot of the hassle that comes with owning physical versions of games. When you own a physical copy, you have to find a place to store it, constantly take it in and out of the case, constantly take it in and out of the console, and you risk damaging or losing the copy altogether. With digital games, it is 100% smooth sailing. Your game is always ready and available right on your system, and all you have to do is select from the menu and you're good to go. But that said, digital gaming does come with some downsides. For one, the lack of physical evidence makes it harder to feel shame, and you have to buy external devices to store the data and wait for ages for the games to download, and of course, relying on purchasing your games from a digital storefront can be really risky in the event that... Yes, in case you aren't already aware, the Nintendo eShop for the 3DS and Wii U was recently shut down. And that's horrible! How could you do this to us, Nintendo? I still had so many games I wanted to play. You can tell by the fact that I haven't touched either system in years. But hey, if we're never gonna see this service running again, might as well make the most of it while I still can and take a look back at my experiences with the eShop and its many highs and lows. My first experience with the eShop was downloading Pokemon Bank and Poke Transporter back in 2014. These two pieces of software were designed to store and transfer Pokemon from the 3DS games as well as transfer Pokemon from Generation 5 up to Generation 6 and 7. I remember these being an absolute bitch to get up and running, although that's probably just because I was stupid. Nevertheless, I was eventually able to figure it out, and I ended up using them a ton back in my prime 3DS days. I used to constantly replay new save files of X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and I always liked to transfer all my Pokemon from those games into the bank before I deleted the save and made a new one. I also got pretty into competitive Pokemon around this time, which led to me breeding a comical amount of Pokemon that I would then store in the bank. The service used to cost about $5 a year, which was a pretty darn good deal since it provided tons more storage for Pokemon and made transferring Pokemon between games incredibly easy. But now that we're no longer able to make purchases on the eShop, they thankfully decided to make the software free. The first actual game I bought on the eShop was The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, shortly after I got Pokemon Bank. It was such a glorious thing to be able to just buy a full-fledged video game and have it right there on my 3DS. I didn't really like the game, but hey, at least that part was cool. Later on, I bought Kirby Fighters Deluxe and DDD's Drum Dash Deluxe, both more fleshed out versions of minigames from Kirby Triple Deluxe. I played them both probably once or twice and then never touched them again, so yeah, good investment. The next big boy game that I bought off the eShop was the newly released Super Smash Bros. 4. Funnily enough, I had actually originally pre-ordered a physical copy, but when the actual midnight release came, I just had to have it right away. So I started the download before going to bed and just so happened to randomly wake up in the middle of the night. Naturally, I eagerly checked to see if the game had downloaded, and indeed it had, so I ended up playing it for about 20 minutes before going back to bed. Is that some beautiful, glorious memory that I'll look back on fondly on my deathbed? I hope not, but it was still a fun and unique experience that really wouldn't have been possible without the eShop. And midnight shenanigans aside, the eShop was perfect for a game like Smash Bros. You can keep a different game in the cartridge slot for more extended play sessions while still keeping Smash Bros on hand to quick play a few games with friends. It didn't happen much, but that was the theory. And honestly, that sort of became the appeal of digital purchases in general for me. Having a system with a massive library of games installed directly onto it is amazing for the portable gaming experience. Just having a big selection of games that you can switch between easily without having to lug a bunch of cartridges around. I mean, come on, whipping out your 3DS game case in public is a surefire method of getting shoved in a locker. Which, you know, totally wouldn't happen if you just had a 3DS by itself. Anyway, for a while after Smash Bros, I would purchase a few eShop games on occasion, Pokemon Omega Ruby, The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, a couple of demos, but for the most part I still heavily utilized physical games. But towards the end of the 3DS's life, around 2016 and 2017, I just went ham with the digital downloads. I had truly realized their greatness and sought to buy games almost all digitally as much as I could. The first step on my journey was Animal Crossing New Leaf. I actually had that game on a cartridge originally, but I later realized that, like Smash Bros, it was perfect for keeping digitally on the system to whip out for short play sessions. I discovered this free data transfer tool which let me move my save data from my cartridge to the 3DS itself so that I could use it with a digital version of the game. I'm honestly kind of surprised that this software even exists considering how niche of a situation it's used for, but I'm really glad it does. So of course I downloaded New Leaf digitally, transferred the data, returned my physical cartridge, and never played it again. From my experience, that's just how Animal Crossing goes, but hey, I'd still rather have it in this form than as a cartridge. I also later did the same thing with Mario & Luigi Dream Team and Yoshi's New Island. Yes, I realize I probably shouldn't have bought Yoshi's New Island. From then on, I bought almost all my games digitally off the eShop, though they were all pretty much standard big boy Nintendo releases. I never really got too much into the eShop exclusive digital titles. The ones that I did get were Team Kirby Clash Deluxe, a free expanded version of a minigame from Kirby Planet Robobot, and a strange little oddity called Runny Egg. I don't remember how I came across it or why I decided to buy it, but it turned out to be a surprisingly fun 2D platformer. It's a pretty short, simple game, but the gameplay is a lot of fun and I really enjoyed my time playing. And for a goofy-ass obscure indie game that I bought for $1.47, that's pretty good. The eShop was also home to the Virtual Console, a fun line of digital releases of old Nintendo games now available to play on modern systems. And the 3DS was perfect for it, having a pretty standard controller design that worked well with games on the NES, SNES, and Game Boy, and being able to stack up a massive library full of old Virtual Console games installed right onto your system was great. I barely used the Virtual Console on the 3DS. Yeah, the only Virtual Console game I ever got on this system was Super Mario World, which is a very wonderful game, but I just never ended up getting around to buying any other old games on this thing, and there isn't really much point anymore now that we have Nintendo Switch Online. Now as for the Wii U eShop, I don't have as many specific memories with this one. I did follow a similar pattern to what I did with the 3DS, getting mostly physical titles before eventually going all digital, although with the Wii U there's less of a solid argument for owning digital games compared to physical ones. Like with the 3DS, it is a lot more convenient to have a bunch of games installed directly onto the system because it's designed to be portable. With the Wii U, well, I'm just too lazy to go to the store. Yeah, digital games on the Wii U don't offer that much more convenience compared to physical games as far as day-to-day use, but even then, it is incredibly handy to be able to buy games right from your system at home and keep them all centralized right on the console. I got a few digital games on the Wii U, Shovel Knight, Wind Waker HD, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and Pikmin 3, but not much as far as eShop exclusives. I got Amiibo Tap Nintendo's Greatest Bits, which I still have never played, and you could maybe argue that Virtual Console games count as eShop exclusives since, although they weren't originally released specifically to be digital purchases on the Nintendo Wii U eShop, they are still only accessible through the eShop. If you do count Virtual Console games, I got Super Metroid and nothing else. Yeah, much like Super Mario World on the 3DS, Super Metroid was a ton of fun, but I just never got around to getting any more Virtual Console games on the Wii U before Nintendo Switch Online made them obsolete. Well, with both eShops finally closing, I might as well embrace the consumer in me and make one last round of purchases before I'm not able to anymore. In late May of 2022, the ability to use credit cards to add money directly from the eShop app was ended. So before that happened, I decided to put $50 on my account, hey, don't look, and buy my last couple games. On the 3DS, I got Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Virtual Console because I didn't want Super Mario World to feel lonely. That may not have been the best investment now that Game Boy games have been added to Nintendo Switch Online, but for now, this particular game still hasn't been added. I also got my hands on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Majora's Mask 3D was one of those good core Nintendo titles that I felt like I really ought to get on the 3DS at some point, even if I'm not absolutely dying to play it right this minute, so I figured I should pick it up. It was only $20 since it's now part of the Nintendo Selects product line, which is a pretty good deal. I've always found the 3DS eShop download screen kind of endearing. I don't know, it's just kind of fun to watch those little droplets go into the little box and slowly fill it up over time. But unfortunately, all you can really do is sit and watch it, so while that's happening, On the Wii U, I bought Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion, both Game Boy Advance games on the Virtual Console, so I can make my Wii U a certified Virtual Console Metroid machine. Fusion was later added to Nintendo Switch Online. I also decided to get Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3, also a Game Boy Advance game on the Virtual Console. The Virtual Console release of this game is unique because it comes with all the levels previously only accessible using the e-reader, an accessory for the Game Boy Advance that let you scan in extra content for certain games. So honestly, this release of Super Mario Advance 4 might well be the definitive version of the game and genuinely worth picking up before it goes away for good. It was also later added to Nintendo Switch Online. Overall though, this isn't a bad haul. Despite my lack of foresight on Nintendo Switch Online, I think this is a nice final selection of games to wrap up my eShop escapades. Then the FOMO set in. Yeah, I ended up buying a sickening amount of games on both consoles in the final days because, well, I'm a fucking idiot. But to be honest, all the stuff I bought was stuff that I would like to play at some point in time, so I had to get them while I still had the chance. Some of the games I bought are purchasable physically, but from what I could tell, the prices on the eShop were about the same or even better than those of the physical version, so it's not like I would be getting a better deal if I didn't buy them on the eShop. Combine that with the fact that there's no guarantee I'll be able to easily find working physical versions of those games, the possibility of those games drastically increasing in price later down the line, and the fact that in some cases the digital versions were much cheaper than the physical versions, and it just made sense to buy a lot of these games digitally while I still could. And of course, there were also a fair amount of games that were entirely exclusive to the eShop, like the Pushmo series, Rhythm Heaven mcmikk, Affordable Space Adventures, Dr. Luigi, and NES Remix 1 and 2. I never had a massive interest in them, but they were pretty consistently recommended as very high-quality eShop exclusive titles, so in those cases as well, I would argue that my impulse spending was actually fairly justified. On the 3DS, I picked out a few straggler big boy games that I had always intended to get but never got around to. I also picked up a few Pokemon games on the Virtual Console because they're compatible with Pokemon Bank, and I think it's cool to be able to bring Pokemon from these old-ass games all the way up into more modern titles. Capcom games also really pulled through for this final shopping spree, with Capcom offering a bunch of their high-quality big boy titles for dirt cheap. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, Phoenix Wright Dual Destinies, Phoenix Wright Spirit of Justice, Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, all for just $3 a piece. Even if these games turn out to be mediocre as hell, I'm okay with my decision. On the Wii U, I mainly snatched up a bunch of Wii games that I'd always been meaning to play. They're all relatively cheap too, all around $20 each, which isn't nothing, but for Metroid Prime Trilogy, I think that's a fair deal. I also got the Virtual Console release of Duck Hunt because I found out that it is still not on the Nintendo Switch Online service, and I figure this version with Wii Remote controls probably works fairly well. I also bought the Virtual Console version of Kirby Squeak Squad for the DS because even though this probably isn't my preferred system to play DS games on, I think having a DS game on the Wii U is funny. And finally, I downloaded a bunch of free stuff. I just downloaded everything on the eShop I could find that was free because it was free. They're mainly demos, free to start games, and miscellaneous other software, which isn't super necessary to have, but as long as they're free and I have space, give me a break, I'm not hurting anyone. And those were my final purchases on the Nintendo eShop on the Wii U and 3DS. The closure of the eShop to me really symbolizes the death of these two consoles. Obviously, these things are both over a decade old at this point and haven't received major new games in years, but even 6 years into the Switch's lifespan, these two consoles still always felt modern to me. I think part of it has to do with these consoles being the ones to really get me into video games as a medium. Of course, I grew up on the Wii and DS and played them plenty, but it was in the Wii U and 3DS era that I really started to get a lot more invested in video games, following gaming news, trying out new franchises, and actually having enough independence to buy games on my own with my own money. So to me, they just don't feel like fossils from olden days finally being taken off life support. They feel like perfectly normal and quote-unquote new systems being forcibly killed before they fully ran their course. So while the closure does make sense, it just feels surreal. The eShop added a lot to these systems, providing access to tons more niche digital indie games, virtual console titles, and even just the convenience of buying new big releases without having to leave your house and fill up space on your shelf. It's understandable that the eShop is finally going away, but I will miss it and will always appreciate all the wonderful experiences that it provided. The Wii U and 3DS eShop really helped breathe so much more life into these consoles. It gave them so much more expansive libraries and made it incredibly easy to discover fun new gaming experiences. Without the eShop, my time with these two systems would not have been nearly as fun as it was. But nevertheless, the world keeps spinning and these things keep aging. These two consoles are well and truly old at this point, and it just makes sense that Nintendo would pull the plug on supporting them eventually. Even though the Wii U and 3DS are all but dead, I will always treasure them because they were instrumental to making me a true blue dedicated gamer. Never mind, fuck these consoles.